welcome to Simulated Erk Train Simulator, episode 41, The Need for Speed, Sometimes. We're going to open up the episode with the high-speed train that we featured in the previous episode. However, we're going to feature it in its natural environment. We're in London, King's Cross and Pancras, and we're going to take a train to Newcastle. No, not the Newcastle in Australia where Erk Tower is located. This episode is produced. Newcastle in England. And the scenario is on this one is that we are going to be allowed to show off the high speed of the high speed train, the HST, the Intercity 125, the Class 43, call it what you will, in the original paint scheme before it goes into service. Towards the end of the episode, we'll feature a new segment that you got a sneak preview on the last episode, a real life moment captured by Simulated Erk to show you some real life trains and other sort of situations in other episodes. Then we are going to feature the high-speed train again in the environment which I featured in the last episode, but for a very different reason. Speed is not always good, and we'll get into that as we go on. So we're just about ready for departure from King's Cross and Pancras, so we'll get into the cab for this first section and we will depart. That horn sounded a lot different than what it did in Frankfurt yesterday. So we'll get into this lower speed section first, and then we'll go outside and we'll have a look at the train in its natural environment. You can see a very different. Actually, I don't think this is like King's Cross and Pancras at all. Even in the 70s and 80s, I don't think. But we'll go with it. Because I don't think there were. No, this isn't. This is just on a section further down the main line, because Newcastle's only 35 miles away. I thought we were starting in London, but we're clearly not. Let's go through these crossovers, 25 miles an hour. Coming into an 80 mile an hour zone. Just waiting for the back of the train to cross over and be fully past the sign. Okay, so let's crank up the HST. Sounds rather sweet. approaching a 65 kilometre an hour, or 65 mile an hour zone rather. Now the interesting thing about this is we're supposed to be showcasing the speed of the train. We haven't hit 100 miles an hour yet. The fastest we've gone has been about 80. But during the time of the introduction of the HST, and all trains sort of go through this, if they're the first one of a generation, they'll go around and do tours, especially back in the 70s and 80s, when you're getting out of the steam era and out of the loco haul diesel era. You've got a train like the HST, well, of course you're going to go and show it off to the general public. 85 mile an hour zone coming up, so we'll be able to open up the throttle again in a moment. Nice clear run for us. There's our 85 board. Slowly crank it up, wait for the back of the train to clear the 85 board. So we can bring it up to speed now. Indicating that we've got a clear signal ahead. try and roll down the hill at a reasonable rate. Some more greens coming up for Homer J. Looking for an opportunity to stretch the week. Haven't really done it, so haven't really had that opportunity so far. Let's go outside the cab again and have a look from outside.
on, there's 120
125 mile an hour zone coming up after the 65. So we'll just make sure that we're doing the 65 for a moment now. In the real world, you would know all this via road knowledge. This is the first time that I've seen this piece of track, so I do have an overlay of what's coming up, so I can get a little bit of a heads up. Let's hope we get a decent run, eh? 125. Just wait for the rear of the train to clear that. 69 mile there. Quite a road.
get there, doesn't matter what sort of train you're in.
running a different setup to what I was running before with that huge 49-inch monitor, amongst other things, and taking a little bit of time to get back into the swing of things. But we are getting back on the road. Simulated Erk, we've got up, see a yard to our left-hand side there. So 55 miles an hour. Fairly level track. Hasn't been a lot of big hills or anything like that we've had to worry about. It's just the relatively low speeds. Another train coming up on the left hand side, is it? No, just me seeing things. After this, we'll run another scenario where we'll actually have to stop at some stations. And then after that, we're going to be a little bit experimental. And we're also, a couple of times this episode, we're going to show you a glimpse of real life. A real life moment brought to you by Simulated Erk. Now, we've still got greens, still 55 miles an hour, so we can't really crank it up that much. Bringing the speed down. rush right there on the left-hand side. Important with the aerial signals to know exactly which one's yours, especially from a distance. Sometimes you see the signal which isn't for you before you see the signal that is for you. So coming in nice and slowly, in the industrial city of Newcastle. Just got over 100 miles an hour, but still pretty good. The station was fantastic. Excellent work. That was a great run northbound. After some press speeches, you were cleared to run round past Gateshead Depot and then back down to the main line to Darlington. That's making it a great second run. We've been given some more instructions to go by a higher level bridge 1. So it looks like we're going to go back to where we started from. So Darlington, not Finch, Frankfurt. Oh dear, that was a bad one. Where are we? We're all the way up there. stay at this angle for a while. As I mentioned, sometimes I like seeing the outside of the train. When I'm driving the train, sometimes you get to buildings where you can actually see your train as a reflection of the building that you're running next to. That's pretty sweet. There's obviously a lot of work that goes into these models, and it's great that you can actually see the outside of the countryside that you're going along. 125-mile-an-hour zone coming up off of 55, so we'll crank it up in. Oh, look at me now, that was unexpected. So we'll crank things up in just a moment. Hope you are enjoying Simulated Erk, Train Simulator. There's a lot of different simulator games that I play. Buses, trucks, trains. I haven't seen a simulated ferry that I can simulate yet. Simulated sport. All at simulatederkgaming.com and also on Simulated Erk on YouTube. As I crank back into Simulated Erk 2020. 125-mile-an-hour board just coming up now. We can just crank the speed up a little bit because we have dropped. I want to go into the 125-mile-an-hour zone as close to the speed limit as I can. Have to wait for the whole train to pass that speed limit before the 125 zone kicks in. It's time to wrap it up. We've just hit the 100-mile-an-hour mark. Still in max power. There's no new speed limit in sight. Another train zooms past us at a great rate of knots. There's a 65 I don't think this 125 zone's big enough for the train to actually reach 125. There's the warning for the 65 board. Gotta put some serious brake on here. See a big amount of time for the train to come back to 65. See, I'm overspeeding there. I didn't give myself enough time. So we'll just keep the brakes. We'll just increase the brakes a little bit. So we'll start taking the brakes off shortly. Yeah, we're under now. And of course, in reality, road knowledge, you'd never allow that to happen in reality. I've said it before, but if you want to become a train driver and you're thinking about it, before you commit to it, have a go at one of those simulators. And if you don't like the simulator, you may not like the real thing. Although, having said that, I do know train drivers that absolutely hate simulators but love the real thing. Needless to say, I love simulators, otherwise I wouldn't be doing Simulated Erk, that's for sure. So we're about to go into an 85-mile-an-hour zone. Here we go, just waiting now for the end of the train to pass it. Gotta say, the speed boards there, I don't think I like them. Here we go, 85 miles an hour. Time to crank up the old girl again. Well, not really old at this stage. This scenario set at the start of the high-speed train era, the HSD era. braking now for the 65-mile-an-hour speed board that's coming up. One thing that there is a balance between full simulation, arcade simulation, and that sort of thing. I can't think of a real train that will give you your speed correct to 1 decimal point. Like for instance, I am doing 42.9, 43.3, 43.8, 43.9, 44.0. I can't think of a train that I know of that would give you the speed correct to 1 decimal place. They usually give it to you in 4 miles per hour, 4 kilometres an hour. Not that precise. I've never known a train to be that precise as indicated on the screen in front of me.
Now, if you've never driven a train before, sometimes you might be actually surprised about the amount of time that you're spending on the throttle. Not necessarily like a car where you basically need to have throttle on most of the occasions to get the car to run. For the next couple of miles or so, I'll give you an example of what speed I'm doing and what throttle percentage I'm basically using. We're on a relatively flat stretch of line. We're doing 82 miles an hour, and at the moment we're rolling, or coasting if you like. No brakes on, and we're just letting the train do the work. Let's accelerate a little bit. So we're using about 20% throttle. We've got about 4 miles an hour to play with speed-wise. 4 moment. So 82 miles an hour. In real life, you have things that you would use as landmarks for your road knowledge, depending on the speed you're going, stations you're stopping at, and that sort of thing. Like our road knowledge would be slightly different for this scenario because not actually stopping anywhere compared to all stations train along this route. For instance, our road knowledge would be slightly different. So I'm just maintaining the speed, just using about 20% throttle. We're just over a mile under the speed limit. And depending on the grade, I can just completely throttle off. So let's do that with this bridge. We'll completely throttle off. So we'll just shut off from all coast. And depending on the grade and how much momentum you've got, you might not need to power again. Depending on the speed limits, depending on the signals, depending on where you're stopping, depending on your train, you might not have to power again for many kilometres. So our speed's dropping a little bit, it's not dropping dramatically. We're just 81.5 miles or about 80 miles an hour at the moment. We're not throttling, so the engines are basically idle. I must point out that at the moment I've never driven a diesel train, although that's changing soon. But the same basic principles apply. We've got a 65 coming up soon on the display on the bottom of the screen, so there's not really much of a need to power up anymore, even though our speed is dropping. Our speed is dropping, but we don't necessarily need to apply the brakes at the moment. We're just letting the train gradually slow itself until we get a little bit closer. Our speed is just incrementally dropping. So if I've timed it right, we should be about 65 miles an hour just before the speed, if I've timed it right. This is without using the brakes. There's the warning board for 65 miles an hour, which you may or may not get in real life. So the signal put the landmark for 65 an hour. So let's put a little bit of brake into it at the moment. On total brake. So I've just slowed it down. I used about 20% brake there at that little stage, just to bring it down, just to help it down to that 65 mile an hour. There's 65 board. So we're still rolling, 0% throttle. Our speed is going down slightly, but that's no great concern at this stage. We're on a relatively straight bit of track. I might just give it a little bit of throttle, maybe 20%, just to so our speed doesn't reduce that greatly. On any train that I've driven, there's no actual cruise control that you might have in a car. So you can't necessarily just say, hey, I want to drive at 65 miles an hour. Set cruise control for 65, please, Siri. And that doesn't happen on any train that I've driven. So we've got an 80 board coming up shortly. There's the 80 board. Got to wait for the back of the train to clear. Set 80 board. I can start to throttle up a little bit. There we go. We've just passed the 80 board. So I'll just gradually increase the power. 75, 76. We can probably start reducing the power down now. And all of this is, a lot of this is experience and knowledge of train management and all that sort of stuff, just to know how much power to apply, how much brake to apply, how much you coast. I've gone back to coast, 30k crossover, 30 mile an hour crossovers there. Just letting it roll, just maintaining that 80 miles an hour at this stage. A bridge could be a landmark, like that bridge that we just went over could be a landmark for something. It could be a landmark to start powering, to shut off, apply a little bit of power. There's another bridge. Bridges are good landmarks because you can see them in most weather conditions. Signals are another good one. 70 broad coming up, so I need to start braking. We did pretty good that time. So we'll just let the train continue to roll now. So it's just not a case of just set and forget. Speed limits are constantly changing. Now depending on where you are, what sort of train etc. you're driving, you might average out a particular section where it might go between say 60 and 70 and 80 kilometres an hour. You might average it out, so you might not ever, depending on how big these speed zones are, you might never even hit 80 kilometres an hour, for instance, because you're going backwards and forwards between the different speed zones. So you might average things out, and depending on your timetable and the hills and the grades and everything like that, you might not necessarily need to be right on the speed boards the entire time and have more of a consistent speed rather than trying to match up and down. Of course, you always have to be under the speed boards. So we've got a flashing yellow coming up. So we need to slow right down and see what the next signal is. We're 2.5 miles from Darlington, so the fact that we're getting restricted signals does make a lot of sense. So once there's anything but green, for me the timetable goes out the window. You just have to, in many cases, base your speed on what the signals are indicating. Again, it depends on how far your signals are apart and everything like that. We've got a flashing yellow here. Now I'm not some genius that knows the British signalling system, but I know that's not clear, so I slow right down, even though track speed is 70. I should expect the next signal possibly to be a stop. So we'll just coast at this point. The signal's just under a mile away. There's an 80 board just before the signal, but we won't be worrying about that 80 board at the moment until we get confirmation that that signal is clear. But having said that, we are 1.5 miles away from our destination, so shouldn't necessarily expect the train to be at, or the next signal to be at clear. This is a classic example of just because the speed board says 70 doesn't mean you need to be doing anywhere near 70 at this point with the signals the way that they are and how they're being presented to us at the moment. you know where the signal is. No need to exactly rush up to it and then brake hard and possibly go past the signal. Just need to slow down. Until you actually work out what that signal's telling you to do. The automatic warning system there warning me that the signal's not fully clear. I'm starting to see the signal now. So we'll just roll up to it. Signals can be hard to see. Ones are yellow. So we'll start to increase our speed a little bit. And looks like we've got a turnout indicator towards the right, which, considering that we'll be arriving at Darlington soon, makes some sense. So we won't have to worry about that 80 speed board. What we will be worried about is this crossover speed. Not all crossovers or turnouts or junctions, call them what you want, not all of them have speed signs. Now there's a turnout coming up which is to the left. We're not going down that one. The route's not set for that direction. That's a 25 mile an hour for the turnout to the left that we're just about to pass over. We're going to continue straight. The route's not set in that direction. The turnout is coming up. So we'll just follow back. Now we know that we've been cleared to go through this turnout because the signal told us that a little bit further back. The last signal that we passed, there's no need for a signal here because the route's already been set for us. So we'll just go through this turnout 25 miles an hour. So we're just doing under that at the moment, so that's fine. Off to the right we go. No more signals now between us and Darlington, so we'll just come in nice and easy, still at the back of the train, passing through that turnout. Got other turnouts here. Depending on the signals here, you might actually have the platform number on the turnout indicator or the route indicator as well. Here's the station. And we'll just go nice and slowly in now. So this was Darlington that we left a little bit earlier, not King's Cross and Pancras. I thought that might have been like the 70s version of it, but no, this is Darlington. So we'll just go nice and slowly. Red telephone boxes there on the platforms, a nice touch. That would have been very common in this sort of era, late 70s, early 80s when the high-speed train was being introduced. Nice long platform for us. Stop at the end of the platform. Shouldn't need to go that far. Probably no car markers to speed of. We'll start to brake shortly. We should be well and truly on the platform anyway. experience that. Passengers getting on and off. Hope you have enjoyed this part of the episode. Fair warning that if you don't like reckless behaviour, if you don't like train derailments, crashes, etc., this is probably a good time to say goodnight to you. Well done, you amazed everyone with the huge improvements a high-speed train can offer and successfully arrived at Newcastle and Darlington stations on time. Well done, Simulated Erk. If you like realistic action, if you don't like reckless driving, high-speed driving, crashes, derailments, now is probably an excellent time to say goodnight to you. However, fair warning that you may not enjoy the next part of the episode. If you like realistic simulated running, you might not like what's coming up. We do have a segment which I'd like you to watch about some real life moments out there in the real world. Speeding 10 times, we picked up passengers 2 out of 2 platforms, we didn't need to refuel, and we travelled a distance of 85 miles, 138 kilometres, which is fantastic. If you would like to take the opportunity to leave us now, if you don't like reckless, high-speed, experimental simulated driving, I totally understand, and that's totally fine. And thank you for watching. If you would like to stay tuned, we have a real-life moment coming up for you, and then after that, we're about to do something a little bit experimental, a little bit dangerous, a little bit reckless, a little bit high-speed. And to illustrate the importance of sticking to the rules. But having said that, of course, Simulated Erk is for entertainment purposes only. I'm Simulated Erk. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Don't forget to stay behind the yellow line, and don't forget tracks are for trains. And don't forget tracks are for trains. welcome back to episode 41 of Simulated Erk, Train Simulator, simulatederkgaming.com. Hope you enjoyed that Science for Your Life, the Newcastle light rail, which runs right outside Erk Tower, and you might have actually seen Erk Tower in a couple of those shots. Anywho, on episode 40 we featured this train, the HST, the high-speed train, the Class 43, call it what you like. And we featured it on the light rail system in Frankfurt. Now, what I tried to do on that episode is that, okay, I ran a high-speed train on a light rail system. Okay, I did that. But apart from that, I tried to follow the rules. Now, I normally don't do this on Train Simulator because I do usually try and follow the rules. But we're going to see what happens if we try and run the HST, the high-speed train, at high speed on this line. So we'll leave the confines of the depot, and then we'll open the throttle up, see how fast you can go, and see what actually happens. So we're in the depot, driver's ready. First cylinder forward. Get into on this occasion we won't go into the cab. We'll follow the action from the outside. Brakes off, and a little bit of throttle to get things underway. Now, in the past I have had people say that, you should be running everything in the cab. Why are you concentrating on the outside? Now, as a driver in real life, I like to be able to see what's happening from the outside and actually see me driving the train. So this, to me, is a new experience. So what we'll do, we'll just keep it running for the moment. We'll allow it to get onto the main line that you can see on the right-hand side. And you can see the length of the train here. We'll end the episode on this one. Hope you enjoyed the HST in its normal environment in England that we opened the episode with. So we'll just let the train get onto the main line. So far so good, right? So about 4 cars to go before we're fully on the main line. Our train's still in a 15 kilometre an hour zone. Got to wait for the whole train to enter the next zone. Now we can see the back of the train is almost fully on the main line now. So round these curves you can see how tight it is. As I mentioned in the previous episode, this in real life probably wouldn't happen. We're up to 20, up into the 20 zone now. So let's just open the throttle. Let's just go to max power. Have a look at the train going around those curves. Slightly unrealistic, but then again, this is Train Simulator. Okay, let's open her up to max power. We all know the max power song. Let's go. Let's see what happens. We're speeding. Thank you, Captain Obvious. .35 kilometres an hour. Marvellous shot of the entire train now that we can see going through the streets of Frankfurt. 50 kilometres an hour. We're in a 60 zone. So far so good. We're still on the tracks. I think we called it the train that couldn't slow down. We're in a 40 zone now. We've just hit the 75 kilometre an hour mark. We're still on the track somewhat surprisingly. We're in a building some reason. I just have to change the camera view. We're about to go into the underground. We've just hit 90. Going through the station, it's better than 60. Let's switch the cab view and over while we're in the underground. So we're over double track speed at the moment. Now do not do this at home. Simulated Erk train simulator is for entertainment purposes only. 106, 107, let's see what happens. We continue through the underground section. 113, 115, 118, 119, in that station at 120, 120, 126, a bit shaky there, 127, 128, 129, 130. Bit wobbly there, still on the tracks, into the underground, won't be comfortable for the passengers. 137, 138, will be able, now this will be a bit rocky through the points here, needless to say. Going back onto the surface shortly. That was a little bit strange, but we'll continue to run with it. Whoa, here we go, and oh dear. Oh dear, needless to say, we crashed. Now, I don't know how much we're actually, well, the back end, okay, that's the back end. It's still on the rails at the back end. And it's still on the previous, still at the previous station. We can probably put the brakes on now. Okay, so the front end. Now, unfortunately, we are in the tunnel section, so I can't really see, and that's probably not a bad thing actually, the absolute carnage that would be there. We're just going up carriage by carriage, but we are in the underground section. We are in the underground section. We're in with the passengers at the moment. We'll just have a look, see if we can see if any part of the train is outside. I don't think we are. So what we're going to do now, we are going to exit out, because obviously there's nothing more that we can do on this occasion. We'll have a look at the settings. Operational errors, speeding twice. I think the whole thing was just continuously speeding, to be honest. I did see on one of the previous ones that I did, I was actually on the previous episode, on episode 40, we exceeded passenger comfort 0.0004%, which is basically bugger all at the time. Now we'll have a look, I've never actually done this, we'll have a look at the replay function. So, welcome back to the depot. We're back on the train. Now, what I thought, when I clicked let's try the replay function, I thought we'd be able to see like an action replay of what actually happened. No, they mean replay as in let's try again. Let's do the scenario again. Rather than let's have a look and see how you derailed. So a little bit of a terminology issue there. The English language isn't a great where you can have two different
two different scenarios, and you can have the same word meaning two totally different things. This is the back. The train is that long that it actually goes through the depot doors there. That's how long it is. So we'll go to the other end. We'll put the lights on correctly at this end. There we go. And what we'll do this time is that we'll play it safe through the tunnels, and then when we get through the tunnels at the other end, then we'll open her up and see what happens. So brakes are good, reverser into forward, brakes off, and we'll play it safe in this little bit, because as we saw, the train didn't actually derail until we were in the underground section, and we were doing quite a little bit of speed. I'll actually have to go back and have a look to see how fast we were going when we derailed. But we'll just play it safe in this area till we go through the tunnel. And then when we get out the other side, I'll open her up. Now, many episodes ago, you can find it for yourself at simulatederkgaming.com or indeed on the YouTube playlist. I compared various speeds of various trains on the one section of track. It was Chengdu in China is this track that I selected, and I had all sorts of trains. I had steam trains, I had diesel locos, electric locos, trains such as the high-speed train, if I had it at the time, which I don't think I did. Actually, that might be a good episode to redo, but with trains that I've purchased since. So we can see some of the other trains and how fast they can go. And that's a really good series of episodes that I recorded quite a few episodes ago now, around about episode 24, around about that sort of area, to see which trains would be the fastest. And my theory was, on that occasion, I just wanted to see how fast the particular trains could go, and having them run on the same section of track, on high-speed track in China, to see how fast they could go. And basically, when I was in a high-speed section of track, I just released the brakes, opened up the throttle to max power, and just see how fast these trains could go. And some of them didn't go very well because they're not designed for high-speed travel, and then there were others like the TGV, the French train, and needless to say that train was very good. It was also the first time that I featured steam on Simulated Erk Train Simulator as well. And there's plenty of episodes that you can see. SimulatedErkGaming.com, Simulated Erk on YouTube. So we'll be heading into the underground section shortly. As I said, we're just going to take a little bit easy in this section, although we're just about to hit a 40 zone, so we'll at least do 40. Now, apart from the horn, the train sounds pretty good. About to go into the underground section, so let's jump in the cab. So we'll throttle down, we'll go through this section,
Now, of course, as I mentioned before, this is for entertainment purposes only. You would never dream of doing this in a real situation, and this is the thing about simulators. This is the thing about simulators, that you can try different things. You can try running a British HST through a German light rail network, for example. So we are resuming production Simulated Erk Train Simulator and all the other games that we've featured, plus new ones that I haven't played yet. For instance, there's a new one called Train Station Renovation that I'm looking forward to having a look at. Also, Bus Mechanic Simulator, looking forward to having a go at that one as well. And looking forward to getting the episodes back to where they were production-wise. This is highly edited at the moment, whereas eventually I would like to get back to doing the episodes basically in real time. Rankings are the R60 and 50 zone at the moment. That does sound pretty sweet, doesn't it? Right at the end of the tunnel, mate. It's just another station. thinking about it, that's one thing that surprised me about the derailment that we had on this train a little bit earlier. It didn't actually come up and say, you have derailed, game over, or something like that. For instance, I think it came up like something like that in a previous game where I purposely derailed or went through a signal of danger, and it came up, you have passed the signal of danger, try again, or game over. Through a long station. Now, we didn't make it this far last time, I am pretty sure. I can't actually see the end of the tunnel section on this on the map down below. I've got pretty well hidden. Seen other YouTubers where they'll just make a complete series of of them making trains derail and that sort of stuff. That's not what I'm usually about, but this one's a little bit experimental and a little bit fun just to see what would actually happen as we go for another section, another station behind the eye line. How much of this was actually underground. There's another lady dressed like Ned Flanders. We're about to leave the underground section now. Alright, let's go straight to max power. We might actually not have enough time to get up to any sort of decent speed before we get back to the depot as we saw. Whoa, that was a bit shaky. Let's go outside. Oh, the back end's really rocking around that previous curve, and what happened? Have we come off further down? Oh, it does say in the corner derail. Check the key to exit or use to the main menu. So let's go back. Looks like the back end's gone off as we've gone. Okay, now he's still upright. Oh dear, in the middle's not, around that curve as I thought might happen. Now that wasn't at high speed compared to the start of this part of the episode. We'll go up and we'll have a look. Yeah, that's well and truly derailed there. The detail actually is, and I hate to say it, the detail is actually quite good in the terms of how the trains come off. There's some passengers on the train, even though we didn't stop anywhere and pick them up. So we can see here, of course, that's inside. Doesn't help us very much. Let's go outside again. Now this is the back of the train, and you can quite easily see there the derailment. Actually, oh wow, look at that shot. I've just zoomed below the level of the platform, and it just looks like there's a couple of guys levitating on where the platform would be. There we go. So if we go up a little bit and have a look, we can see here just how tight the curve is. So if we go, and we'll go to the front, and we'll give you a damage report. Front power car okay. The first carriage okay. Whoops. First carriage okay. Second carriage okay. Third carriage okay. Fourth carriage is okay. Fifth is on its side. Sixth is on its side. Seventh is derailed but upright. That one's on. And that's car 7. And the back power car is okay. So I'll go back and have a little bit of a look at the footage, just to give you the speeds at which the trains left the rails in both cases, and then we will conclude the episode. Back shortly. Welcome back to Simulated Erk Train Simulator. Just had a look at some of the footage there, which of course you can do as well just by rewinding parts of the episode. The first derailment that we had in the tunnel was at about 152 kilometers an hour in a 70 zone. I didn't actually realise this when I was recording live. However, the front power car actually went onto its side. So front power car onto its side, that's where it ended up. Now of course this is simulated, but what it also does, it goes to show you what speed can do in relation to the speed limit on the tracks. 152 in a 70 zone, well and truly over, we know that, and no surprise that the train came off the tracks there. Now the second one, which we've just completed, is where we derailed going around the curve. It was a 20 kilometer an hour curve. We were going nowhere near as fast when we derailed. We were doing 60, just on 60 kilometers an hour, but the track was only rated for 20, so we were about 40 k's over the speed limit, and obviously these speed limits are here for a reason. This is a good illustration of that, where you don't have to go out and derail a train in real life. To show this, you can do it on a simulator, and you can see the results here. So the track speed was nowhere, the actual train speed was nowhere near as high. However, having said that, the track speed was a lot lower. Now the severity is really hard to judge because we couldn't see the inside of the tunnel to see how many cars were actually derailed compared to here. With this one we could, and so we've got, as I mentioned earlier, one upright and two on its side. Both bad collisions, and I mainly wanted to do this to sort of prove a point that you have to drive to the conditions, to the speed limits, and when things like when speeding happens, you've got the wrong train on the wrong track,
which we did for simulation and entertainment purposes. Now there's no way that this train would be on this track, and actually what we might do, we'll actually go and put the right train on the right track as an illustration, and we'll show you the difference and see if what happens in this scenario happens in the other scenario. Of Simulated Erk train simulator. We're at the depot of the tram depot in Frankfurt, and I have decided to use a different tram that I featured on episode 37 of Simulated Erk Train Simulator. This is a U3 class. It's painted in beige and orange, and to get to this point I basically had to get it warmed up from a cold start, and it was a bit of trial and error. The cab is all in German, so I just had to use my previous experience and also use some of the labels of the buttons, the helper labels and that sort of thing, to actually warm it up, because it was dead cold, pantograph down, no power to it whatsoever. So we've got some power to it now, a single brake controller, power brake controller combined. So let's get into some action. So what we'll do the same as we did with the HST. We'll get out of the confines of the depot, and then we'll open up the throttle. Now, according to the gauge here, the maximum speed is about 80 kilometers an hour. Oops, just pan up, zoom out a little bit. About to go onto the main line now. We'll give you the outside view. There we go. As we're going on to the main line now, a similar view that we gave you earlier on in the episode. Going onto the tracks around the curve. We'll wait until the whole train is on the main line. It's the joy of simulation. You can do whatever you want, you can see whatever camera angle you want, you can go back and you can have a look, and everyone's safe. And of course, as I say again, Simulated Erk is for entertainment purposes only. So the whole of the train is just about onto the main line. It's all the way onto the main line now. Let's open her up, sing the Max Power song, and off we go. So we're now speeding. The acceleration is actually quite good, and it looks like that curve. Have we got all the train through the curve? Yes, we have. Holding on for dear life. There's 80 kilometers an hour there, and it looks like it can go no faster than that. Around the bend, this is going to be tight. You can see a little bit of shaking there towards the tail end. Now, of course, this train is designed for this system, not designed, of course, to be driving at this sort of speed. 40 k's over the speed limit at the moment. We're just about to go into the cab section now. So we'll just keep it on 80, so it's at max power. We're in a 60 zone at the moment, doing 80.
cab view until we get out of the tunnel section. Now obviously do not try this at home. We're in a 50 zone now. I'm just doing under 80 as the track goes up and down the grade. Now the speed obviously won't be as high as the HST that we saw earlier on in the episode. But of course there is always the possibility that the tram could derail. We do have a 70 zone coming up in a couple of stations time. Now needless to say, this would be rather uncomfortable. You can see them bouncing up and down of the control desk. One thing that I noticed looking back at the footage of the HST derailment is that the train stopped almost instantly. Now that in real life wouldn't happen if you were doing, even if you were doing 50 or 60 or the 152 that we were doing the first time around. It would take a lot longer to stop than what it did in simulated life. Going around the curve, coming into the zoo station now, you can see it all decorated because the zoo's obviously up above. Now we might actually make it into the above ground section again. Points are always difficult, they can always send you swaying, and sometimes there's points where you really need to go under the speed limit just for the sake of passenger comfort. Obviously not thinking about passenger comfort at the moment. We're in a 70 zone, we're just about 10 kilometres an hour over the limit at the moment as we pass through our next station. One thing the Germans are very good at on their rail networks and their transit networks is themes and decorations, and like the zoo station, we saw that very briefly, of course, we saw there's always decorations and paintings, and all the stations don't look the same, which is fantastic. Just about to hit 80 again as we go through this station. We're about to pass through another couple of stations before we get into the above ground section. Some points there was a little bit shaky through the points, as you'd expect, even though only 10k is over the speed limit. We'll see what happens if we make it to the curve where the HST derailed the second time around. Approaching another station, not necessarily straight platforms, but pretty straight. Go through another platform. Got another couple of platforms to go, then we're into a 60 zone, then a 20 zone, which is basically where we derailed at the industrial station with the HST. Now the speeds aren't as high as when we derailed the first time, obviously. So we go through another platform. This 20 kilometre an hour curve at the industrial station is going to be an interesting one, and we'll compare to carnage. Of course, the HST a lot heavier, it's built for heavy rail, this is the lighter rail, so the carriages aren't as heavy, the power to weight ratio would be different, the maximum speeds are different. Still about 10 k's over the speed limit, but a little bit bumpy. We'll hit this station, then we'll start to go uphill into a
60 zone, then to the industrial station. So once we reach on the main line, we're basically just stuck in a max power the whole time. Now this next section is going to be very interesting, and as soon as I get into the above ground section, we'll go to the exterior view. Exterior view please, there we go. This is the curve coming up where we derailed the HST the second time around. Round the curve, and oh, that is massive carnage. Now we were doing 80 kilometers an hour. We saw that the HST actually ended up better off in terms of vehicles rolling. We do a damage report here. First, second, third. The first three carriages are on the side. The fourth one is at an angle. The fifth looks to be on just. Oops, we'll go backwards. Fifth is on backwards, and then well, that's at a weird angle. So no, that's off. No, that's off the rails as well. That's off the rails as well. Car 5, car 6. Car 7, car 8's hit the platform. So all the carriages there are in some sort of derailed form. All of the carriages have derailed at various angles. We can see there the train has hit the platform. The last car has hit the platform there. Another consideration that is different and is very important in a derailment situation is the overhead power lines, which would be all over the place at the moment. You can see there the 8th car, the pantograph, well and truly off the wire there. We'll see if we can drop the pantograph, see what happens. Probably don't have any control of that. We'll go back to the cab. See various forms of derailment here, various angles. You can see that the train was going around the curve closest to camera and has basically ended up on the other track as well, which is also an important consideration in terms of the actual derailment. So both lines blocked. Massive carnage at a higher speed. I should also point that out, at a higher speed. We derailed at the same curve with the HST at 60 kilometers an hour. Having said that though, there were carriages that were upright and were not derailed. Here, every carriage is derailed, some on their side, some at different angles. So I don't think we can do anything about the pantographs now. The driver's sitting there steadfast. And as you can see, major carnage as the train was heading around the curve. Speed limit of 20, went off the rails doing 80, and it was the same curve where the HST went off the tracks earlier on in the episode. The HST, a heavier train, went off at a lower speed, but some of the carriages stayed on. None of the carriages stayed on the tracks. They're all in some sort of derailed form, as we can see right here across the level crossing. Both tracks are blocked. All the power would be off, and in reality, a massive operation to get this scene back to normal. But you can see here the different effects of the different speeds. This light rail train runs on these tracks. The 20 kilometre an hour speed limit is obviously there for a reason, and we saw exactly what can happen if you speed on the tracks, and not just a kilometre or two over. This was 60 kilometres an hour over the speed limit. The HST was 40 kilometres over the speed limit at the same curve. It's obviously a 20 kilometre an hour curve for a reason, and this is exactly what can happen and exactly what you don't want to see in real life. Speaking of real life, we'll end up the episode now with a real life moment, Simulated Erk, at simulatederkgaming.com. We'll be incorporating some real life moments into all episodes from this point where I've got some relevant footage. Hope you enjoyed the episode, simulatederkgaming.com, for entertainment purposes only, and I will see you next time. Don't forget, don't speed, stay behind the yellow line, and tracks are for trains. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.